that last week in New Hampshire, I gave a speech. and let me just say that since then, my office has been flooded with thousands of letters and emails from folks all across the country, speaking out for the values of decency and respect that we all hold dear. Men of all backgrounds and walks of life agreeing that decent men do not demean women. And we shouldn't tolerate this behavior from any man, let alone a man who wants to be the president.
That was First Lady Michelle Obama criticizing Donald Trump at a rally for Hillary Clinton in Phoenix, Arizona, not that long ago. First Lady was one of several powerhouse Democratic surrogates out on the trail today, hammering Donald Trump. With us from the city of brotherly love, that would be Philadelphia, is Republican strategist Kim Alfano. And here in our New York studio of brotherly love is Democratic strategist Mike Feldman. Mike, I want to start with you just because one of the things that's been happening since last night when Donald Trump made his comment about not necessarily accepting the results of the election is that people in his camp and people out there in the country have been saying, what's so bad about that? Al Gore contested the election in 2000. Given that your closeness to Vice President Gore and the fact that you were part of that story, explain to us whether they have a point or not.
They have a point, but it's the wrong point. This has been pretty well litigated today. But look, 2000 was a disputed election. As you both know, Florida was under recount by law. I think nobody would doubt that it was good to go through every legal process they could to determine that the will of the voter was actually honored by the process. But again, when the highest court in the land weighed in and stopped the recount, Al Gore, and there were plenty of people encouraging Vice President Gore to pursue it further, he not only graciously conceded the election, but he told everybody, look, don't trash the court. And there's a fine line here between anarchy, essentially, and a disputed Supreme Court decision. And it was a good moment. And what concerned me about last night were people that were going out and using that example when, in fact, what Mr. Trump did last night was the very opposite of that kind of graciousness.
Kim, remind everybody briefly where you stand on your party's nominee. You voting for him?
I'll keep you in suspense.
Okay, very funny. So Kim,
I'll tell you at the time.
Let's say that this program ends and your phone rings and it's Steve Bannon and Kelly and Conway on speaker, and they say, Mr. Trump's decided that debate answer and the way he tried to address it today is not good. He wants something new to try to put this behind us. What would you tell him to do?
Stop trying to be so clever. I think he gets himself in trouble where he has the meat of what people who are supporting him and people who are disgruntled with Washington and the system want to hear, and then he takes it too far. I think that happened to him a couple of times in the debate last night. He's got good gut instincts about what's going on in the hearts and minds of people who are tired of politics as usual, but then he tries to be too clever and put on a show instead of just laying that out there, and I think that's just because that's who he is.
Kim, when you were watching that debate last night, one of the things we discussed earlier in the show was that moment when Hillary Clinton made a comment about him not paying taxes, and then he sort of, not really under his breath, but he sort of snapped at her and said, he called her a nasty woman. I've heard from women all day today who read into that not just a snappiness, but a kind of misogyny that upset them. Do you, as both as a woman and a Republican woman, when you heard that, did you groan? What was your reaction to that comment by Mr. Trump?
I'm actually a suburban Pennsylvania voter.
Yeah, right. There you go.
Woman. So, look, I think that, I don't like the guy. I really don't. I don't want to hang out with him. But I think that that people are getting their panties in a bunch a lot over a lot of stuff. He says things in an incendiary way. He shouldn't. But he treated her like any other guy on who might be on the stage with her. So if you're a woman in a business like I have been for a long time where there were no women, I would have taken that as a compliment, not that I would want anyone to talk to me that way. But I wouldn't have gotten so upset over that. And I think that, the bulk of everything that he's been talking about for the last several days, it does turn him into a really big jerk. But actions as well are important. And if you look back over history, there are some whose actions have been pretty gross too.
So Hillary Clinton calls you after the show and says, Mike, everybody around me says things are going really well. I want you to come to the headquarters tomorrow, interview everybody on the staff you want to. Make sure we're doing everything we need to do. Who would you talk to? What would you ask them?
Well, I think they're doing a pretty good job. Yeah. I would say, and I think she did it last night, but it was overshadowed by these comments that Mr. Trump made. She's got to start, and Randy alluded to it earlier, she's got to start laying claim to the outcome of this election, which at this point, I think if the election were tomorrow, people would view as a total repudiation of her opponent and not necessarily a mandate for her. And I think you saw her starting to do that last night. You saw her starting to try to talk to independents, moderate Republicans, and others and try to lay out a vision. And nobody heard very much of it just because of the outcome of the debate. So that's one thing, because they need to start thinking about how they're going to govern in addition to how they're going to turn out their vote and win this election. Just one thing that Kim said I think is really important, and I agree with what you said on the substance. But the debates, I've heard, and it's been said often, but it's true. Debates do matter, and preparation for debates matter. And I think what this debate showed, and what all three debates have shown in totality, is a lack of preparation and a lack of discipline, which is troubling in a potential president of the United States. It's not like Mr. Trump didn't know that there was going to be a question last night about his comments leading up to it about a rigged election. Every single member of his team, including his running mate, was giving him a trail of breadcrumbs for that answer, and yet he still dominated the news the day after and the debate by making a comment that was clearly viewed out of bounds by even people in his own party.
I'm going to ask you guys both the same question now, but Michelle Obama's down in Arizona. We just played that sound. They're trying to win Arizona. The polls in Texas are pretty close. Georgia, Priorities USA, is now spending money there. Missouri, there are a lot of places suddenly the Clinton campaign's playing. Right now, today, if you had to project, you think Hillary Clinton will win by what-ish?
Oh, I don't know. I mean,
but this starting to look like a landslide to you, or do you think it's going to be tight still?
No, it feels electorally like she's going to have a very good night. I mean, it depends, obviously, on turnout. Again, her campaign has methodically been identifying and communicating to their voters. They have a pretty good idea of who's going to show up. I would guess the Trump campaign and the GOP have less certainty around who's going to turn out. And I think what you saw today is an example of what the Clinton campaign is going to do for the next 2 weeks, which is surrogates, principals, everybody out there trying to energize and let people know what's at stake in the election.
Kim, you're going to be, if I'm going to ask you to be a dispassionate analyst sitting there in Pennsylvania, are you starting to feel landslide, or does this still feel like a tight election to you?
I am loath to predict anything in this election ever, because I was on your show about 6 months ago and got everything wrong. So first, I'll lead with that caveat. I think that we can't really predict a landslide, though. To start with, in any election, it is sort of rigged, not in the way that elections don't work, but it is rigged. The Electoral College kind of leans Democrat to begin with, but I don't think that this is a left-right split anymore. I think this is a top-bottom split, and how that plays out on Election Day is going to be new and different for all of us to look at.
All right. Kim, you think there's any chance Donald Trump can win Pennsylvania, where you're sitting right now?
I will, keep you in suspense.
Man, Kim's taking a pass on all the questions today. But we always love having her here. Kim Alfano, you're awesome. Mike Feldman, you're, adequate.